I rescued my 15-year-old nephew from the streets 20 years later. He's the architect saving his saboteur. Hello, my name is Eleanor Vance, and I am 77 years old. This is a story about a debt that took 20 years to repay, and the man who chose to save the person who had tried to destroy his life. The title you just heard is not hyperbole. 20 years ago, I rescued my 15-year-old nephew, Callum, from a youth outreach center in Seattle. He wasn't just hungry, he was broken. His spirit was a canvas of deep, invisible cuts, and he carried the weight of a betrayal that no child should ever know. I took him in and I raised him. 2 decades later, he became an architect renowned globally for his structural genius and ethical rigor, the kind of architect who designs buildings that redefine skylines. Then, one brisk November afternoon, the unthinkable happened. Callum was called into an emergency structural review of a new, flagship corporate tower structure worth over $40 million, teetering on the edge of catastrophic collapse. The lead architect responsible for the flaw was none other than the man who had systematically and maliciously framed 15-year-old Callum, driving him onto the streets. My nephew stood over the digital blueprints, a choice in his hands. He could expose the fundamental flaw, legally bury his tormentor, and watch the man's prestigious, corrupt career crumble in an hour. Subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments which country you're watching from. Let's see. Or he could use his unparalleled expertise to save the structure, save the jobs of hundreds of innocent engineers, and in the process save the career of the man who had abandoned him. The structural failure meant the project had perhaps 48 hours before total disaster. He could walk away, let someone else handle the ethics investigation, or he could save the one man who had taken everything from him when he needed stability the most. Before we dive into the complexity of Callum's choice, please take a moment to leave a comment telling us where you are watching from today. I love seeing the community we are building of people who know that even our deepest scars can inspire our greatest achievements. Now back to my story. The phone rang during my late shift at the Public Library Archives. I was shelving a collection of first edition blueprints when I saw the caller ID. The Evergreen Project. My hands went cold, rattling the microfiche drawer I held. I stepped into the back corridor and answered. Eleanor, it's Ben from the Northgate Outreach Center. We have your nephew here. Callum. His voice was steady, but I could hear the worry in the background buzz. He showed up 2 nights ago. We found your emergency contact card tucked into his worn-out jacket. The hallway suddenly felt narrow. I leaned my shoulder against the steel shelving unit. Which center? Northgate. Eleanor, I'm so sorry. I didn't know sooner. He wouldn't talk about how long he's been on the streets. It's okay. Thank you for calling. Thank you for taking him in. I hung up and walked straight to the supervisor's office. I told Mrs. Hernandez I had a family emergency. She took one look at my face and simply said, "Go." 5 years. I had been waiting 5 years for a call like this. I grabbed my old leather satchel and left. The drive across town felt like a nightmare in slow motion. It's strange what your mind focuses on when you're driving toward a scene of wreckage. You think you'll concentrate on the road, but I kept seeing my younger sister, Evelyn, standing in the kitchen with Marcus Thorne's arm around her. Marcus had seemed charming at first, a junior partner at a prestigious architecture firm, quiet, ambitious. He was kind to Evelyn. Callum came along 3 years later. Marcus held that baby like he was a delicate glass model. Then Callum turned 10 and Marcus changed. Marcus's firm, Crestwood Designs, landed a massive contract, a state-of-the-art convention center. Marcus, being young and eager, cut corners, overrode safety protocols, and fudged stress calculations on a key structural truss. The truss buckled during construction, causing a 7-figure delay and massive cost overruns. Marcus panicked. He couldn't risk his career. He was already up for a promotion. So he executed the perfect ruthless crime. He manufactured evidence email chains, fabricated sketches, and time card logs to place the blame squarely on the shoulders of the firm's newest and most vulnerable intern, his 10-year-old stepson, Callum. The firm, needing a fall guy, quietly let young Callum take the blame, officially citing a child's interference with sensitive materials. It was monstrous. Evelyn, terrified of losing Marcus and his income, stood by his lie. When I tried to intervene, she broke with me completely. The next 5 years were a steady decline. The lie became the atmosphere in the house. Callum went from a bright, chattering kid who drew complex machines to a quiet, nervous shadow. When I asked if everything was okay, he'd look at me with his huge, brown eyes and nod, but he wouldn't meet my gaze. I tried visiting more, but Marcus was always there, sitting in the living room like a stone gargoyle. Finally, Evelyn called me. Her voice was flat. "We're moving to the East Coast. Marcus got a lead project there. A fresh start. A fresh start." That's what she called isolating her son from the only person who saw the truth. I tried to stay in touch, but their numbers changed. I even consulted a lawyer about kinship intervention, but without police evidence of physical harm, the courts always favor parental rights. All I could do was wait and pray that the promise of safety I'd made to him when he was a baby would one day lead him back to my door. And now, 5 years later, the call had come. I pulled into the parking lot of the Northgate Outreach Center almost 2 hours after Ben called. The building was solid, made of gray cinder block, with a large heavy security door. I sat in my car for a minute, letting myself imagine what I might find inside. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. I got out and walked to the door. Inside, there was a receptionist desk and a kind-faced woman in her late 40s sitting behind it. She looked up when I came in. "Can I help you?" "I'm here for Callum Vance. I'm his aunt Eleanor." She paused, then consulted a clipboard. "Are you on his approved family list?" "I am the only family he has left who knows how to keep him safe," I stated, keeping my voice level. She looked at me for a long moment, then stood. "Have a seat. Let me bring him out." She walked down a hallway marked private residences and disappeared. I stood in the waiting room, clutching my satchel, my heart beating so hard I could feel the pulse in my throat. Ben came back down the hallway with a boy beside him. I knew it was Callum, but I had to tell myself that, because nothing about this boy resembled the chattering, bright-eyed child I remembered. He was severely thin, maybe 110 pounds when he should have been closer to 140. His shoulders were hunched forward, and his clothes donated, likely from the center's lost and found, hung off him like ill-fitting shrouds. His face was drawn and pale. The worst part was his eyes. They were huge, dark circles surrounding a perpetual stare at the floor, like he was trying to disappear into the industrial-grade carpet. He was walking carefully, favoring his right side, and wouldn't look at me. I walked toward him slowly, knelt down, and kept my voice calm, even though everything inside me was screaming with protective fury. "Hello, baby. I'm here. I'm taking you home." His voice came out a rough whisper, and his shoulders shook. He was crying, silent tears running down his cheeks and dripping onto his chin. "Can I hug you, Cal?" He nodded, a jerky motion. I stood up and wrapped my arms around him carefully. He was so thin I could feel every knobby bone in his back. He shook harder, and I just held him, letting him cry into my shoulder until his breathing started to slow down. Ben was watching us, his expression sympathetic. When Callum finally pulled away and wiped his face with the back of his hand, Ben cleared his throat. "I need to verify your kinship and run a standard background check, Eleanor. We also need to be clear. His mother still has legal custody. I need her permission to release him to you." My face tightened. His mother's partner is the one who emotionally tortured and framed this child, forcing him onto the street. You want to send him back there? Ben looked at Callum, at the way he was standing with his arms wrapped tightly around his midsection. He made a decision right there. "I can mark you as an emergency kinship placement. This gives you 72 hours, exactly 3 days, to file for legal guardianship with the family court. If you don't, I will have to notify his biological parents. I'll have the papers filed with a lawyer by tomorrow morning," I promised. He nodded and returned to his desk, pulling out a thick folder. I sat back down next to Callum. He was staring intensely at his hands. Ben brought over a stack of forms and resource sheets, contacts for social services, therapists specializing in youth trauma, and hotline numbers. I signed where he told me to sign and took copies of everything. While Ben was processing the release, I glanced at his intake form lying on the desk. The words swam before my eyes: extreme malnutrition, evidence of prolonged psychological abuse, possible undiagnosed stress fractures. Ben handed me the final papers. "Take care of him, Eleanor." "I will," I vowed. We walked out to my car. Callum kept looking over his shoulder at the building, like he expected Marcus to come running out and drag him back. When we got to the car, he climbed in the passenger side and pressed himself against the door, watching the side mirror the whole time I started the engine. I didn't try to force conversation. I just let the silence settle between us. About 30 minutes into the drive, I pulled into a large supermarket pharmacy lot. "We need to check you over when we get home, Cal. Make sure nothing needs immediate medical attention. That okay?" He nodded silently. I went inside and bought supplies. Electrolyte drinks, high-protein supplements Ensure and vanilla flavor bandages, and a large bottle of a new anti-anxiety herbal supplement I'd read about. The cashier asked if I was stocking up for flu season. I simply said, "Something like that," and paid in cash over $250 worth of essentials. When I got back to the car, Callum was in the exact same position watching the side mirror. My house looked exactly as I had left it that morning. Small 2 bedrooms organized. The guest room had been ready for 5 years. Fresh, expensive cotton sheets on the bed. Blueprints I had framed on the walls, old architectural drawings that I hoped might inspire him, in new blackout drapes. "This is yours, Cal," I said, showing him the room. He stood in the doorway, looking at the bed, the lamp on the nightstand, and the window with the heavy drapes. "I need to look at your side now. Can you take your shirt off?" He did, pulling it slowly over his head. I had to work hard to keep my face neutral. His ribs on the right side were alarmingly prominent, but clear of fresh bruises. The pain wasn't physical, it was internal. "His pain is his past, Eleanor. My sister had warned me once. The past doesn't cause stress fractures, Evelyn," I had countered. Now Callum's shoulder blades showed thin white scars from old, healed wounds, not belt marks, but the kind of cuts that come from a malicious push against a sharp corner. His collarbone stuck out sharp under his skin, muscle wasted away. I didn't touch him. "I'll tell you before I touch you from now on, Cal. Okay?" He nodded. I gave him the supplements and a large glass of water. He swallowed them dry, drinking the water down in one go. "I'm not calling the police tonight. You are safe here. Tomorrow we figure out the rest." He just stood there holding the empty glass. "They don't know I'm here." "Not yet. Marcus, he'll make me go back." I looked at him, this child who had been beaten down by lies and starvation, still terrified of a return to his tormentor. "Over my dead body, Callum." Something in my voice must have convinced him, because his shoulders dropped slightly. I made simple food that night. Toast with butter and chicken broth from a can. Nothing heavy. His stomach probably couldn't handle much after going without for so long. He sat at my kitchen table and ate slowly, tentatively, like he had forgotten how, or like he was afraid someone would take it away if he went too fast. Halfway through the bowl of broth, he stopped, set his spoon down, and looked directly at me for the first time. She knew Eleanor. She knew Marcus was lying. About the truss. About everything. I reached across the table and covered his thin hand with mine. "I know, honey. And I believe you." He picked up his spoon and finished the broth. After he ate, I showed him the room again. I gave him a pair of my old, comfortable pajamas, too big, but clean, and soft from being washed hundreds of times. "The door locks from the inside if you want. The bathroom's across the hall. I'm right next door. Just knock if you need anything." He stood in the middle of the room, staring at the bed, the clean pillows, the geometric patterns in the framed blueprints, like he didn't know what to do with a space that was entirely his own. "You are safe now, Cal." His eyes filled up again, but he didn't say anything. I wanted to hold him again, tell him everything would be okay, but I didn't know if he wanted to be touched right then. So I just smiled at him and pulled the door halfway closed behind me. In my bedroom, I sat on the edge of the bed. My hands were shaking. Now that the immediate panic was over, now that he was physically here, everything I'd been holding back for the last 2 hours hit me at once. I picked up my phone, found Evelyn's number, the one I'd gotten through an old college friend. My finger hovered over the call button. Not yet. Not until my lawyer, Mr. Jensen, secured custody. Not until Callum was legally mine and Marcus couldn't touch him. I set the phone down and sat there in the dark, listening to the sound of the shower running across the hall, the pipes creaking, the water shutting off, footsteps, his door closing, then silence. I got up and walked quietly to his room, looked through the crack in the door. He was asleep on top of the covers, still fully dressed, curled up on his side, facing the door like he needed to see who was coming in. I left him there, went back to my room, lay down with my clothes still on, and stared at the ceiling until the sun came up. I woke up to silence. I checked the guest room. Callum was still asleep on top of the covers, still dressed. I left him there and made coffee. I called my lawyer, Mr. Jensen. Nathaniel, I need emergency custody of my nephew today. He asked enough questions to understand the severity, the neglect, the psychological abuse, the abandonment, and told me to bring Callum by his office at 2 o'clock that afternoon. The week after, I took Callum to Dr. Sharma, my longtime family physician. Dr. Sharma had known Callum since he was a small boy. His face tightened when he heard the story. He examined Callum thoroughly, took careful notes for the legal record, and didn't push when Callum wouldn't answer questions. At the end, he gave me a referral card. Dr. Claire Ellis. She specializes in trauma, Eleanor. Psychological trauma, specifically. He looked at me, his eyes grave. He's going to need help. A lot of help. I know, I said. The first therapy appointment was 3 days later. Callum sat on Dr. Ellis's leather couch and didn't say a word for 50 minutes. She didn't push. At the end, she told him he could come back next week if he wanted. In the car, he asked, "Do I have to go back?" "If you want to feel better about everything that happened, yes," I said. He looked out the window. Okay. My sister Evelyn started calling on the 4th day. 35 times over 3 days. I didn't answer, just listened to the voicemails. First she was angry. "Eleanor, where is he? The center called me. You had no right." Then desperate. "Please, Eleanor, just tell me he's okay." Midway through, she tried Marcus's tactic. Marcus wants to explain. "It's not what you think." Near the end, she gave up. "Fine, keep him then." I can't fight you anymore." The last voicemail was different. Her voice was empty. "I can't fight anyone anymore, Eleanor." Like something inside her had finally broken all the way through. I saved every voicemail, sent them all to Mr. Jensen. 2 weeks later, we had the custody hearing. I expected a fight. Evelyn was standing outside the courthouse with Marcus and a corporate lawyer. Marcus looked sleek and unbothered. Evelyn looked terrible, thinner. A bruise on her arm barely covered by a long trench coat. She wouldn't look at us. Mr. Jensen got a call before we went in. When he came back, his face was strange. "She's not contesting. Evelyn is signing voluntary relinquishment of custody." I stared at him. "What?" "She's giving him to you." Callum went very still beside me. Inside the courtroom, the judge looked at Evelyn. "Mrs. Thorne, you understand you are giving up legal custody of your minor son?" Her voice came out flat. "Yes, Your Honor." "He's better off with Eleanor." The judge signed the papers, granted me full legal guardianship. Walking out, Evelyn tried to come toward us. Callum shrank back against my side. She stopped, tears running down her face. "I'm sorry, Cal." Callum didn't say anything. "Evelyn, go home," I said gently. She looked at me for a long moment, then turned and walked away. Marcus followed her, never looking back at Callum. That night, I heard Callum crying through the wall. I met with the prosecutor the next week. I told him I wanted to press charges against Marcus Thorne for child abuse and malicious fabrication of evidence. He looked at the medical records, the legal deposition, and the photos, then shook his head. Eleanor, without the mother's corroboration, without her testifying that she saw him maliciously frame Callum and lock him out, it's just the boy's word against the defendant's. Defense will say he's lying to avoid responsibility for the construction incident. We have no physical evidence. I can offer Thorne a plea deal. Probation and anger management. That's the best I can do. Probation? He tortured a child for 5 years and ruined his reputation. I told Callum that night, watching his face shut down. So he just gets away with it? Not forever, Cal. This goes on his record. But we both knew that wasn't enough. 2 months later, Callum started high school sophomore year in a new district. He struggled. He was emotionally exhausted and academically behind in everything. I hired a tutor, Amy. She was a pre-med college student, patient and kind. She came 3 times a week. Therapy was twice a week. Callum started talking more. Dr. Ellis said he was making progress. The nightmares were the hardest part. Some nights I'd knock on his door. "Can I come in?" He'd be sitting up, shaking. I'd sit on the edge of the bed. "You're not alone anymore, Cal." One night he spoke. "She didn't even try to keep me." I didn't have an answer for that. Why wasn't I enough? That broke my heart. This isn't about you, baby. This is about her being broken in ways I can't fix. He wiped his face, nodded like he understood. By month 4 things were better. Callum was putting on weight. The color was back in his face. He laughed at something on TV. He started asking me about the blueprints I kept framed in his room. "What is this one, Eleanor? Why did the architect use an asymmetrical truss system?" One afternoon he mentioned wanting to be an architect someday. "You'd be good at that, Cal." He looked at me. "Because I know what it's like to build something and have someone try to destroy the foundation. I understand failure. That makes you meticulous with people's safety." He smiled. Just a small one but real. That night he called me Aunt E instead of Eleanor. First time. I kept my face normal. Then went to the kitchen and cried into a dish towel. 6 months after I brought him home, the school year ended. His grades had come up to B's and C's. For a kid who'd missed as much as he had, that was huge. Dr. Ellis pulled me aside. "He's doing remarkably well. He's resilient." He shouldn't have to be. No, but he is. Summer started. Callum volunteered at the city's Historic Preservation Society, coming home covered in plaster dust and stories about old colonial homes. He was eating normally, sleeping better most nights, and getting stronger. I watch him and think he's going to make it. One night, we sat at the kitchen table eating lasagna. He told me about a funny argument he'd witnessed between 2 elderly carpenters about the correct joint for a cantilevered balcony. It turned into this whole dramatic demonstration involving measuring tape and shouting. I laughed. Real deep laughter. He grinned. "You should come visit the site sometime, Auntie." "Maybe I will." We finished dinner in comfortable silence. This was what family looked like now. Just the 2 of us slowly rebuilding a future. Callum's junior year, he joined the engineering club. He came home one afternoon and told me about building a model pedestrian bridge out of balsa wood that could hold 75 pounds. His eyes lit up when he talked about it. His grades were solid A's and B's now. Senior year, he started applying to university programs, the pre-architecture track. He wrote his essay about his time on the streets, about learning that the only thing you truly own is your foundation, and how he wanted to build safe foundations for others. He never mentioned Marcus or the abuse, just wrote about trusses, safety margins, and how something broken could still produce something beautiful. The State University School of Design accepted him with a generous scholarship. I covered the rest with my retirement savings, over $50,000. "This is what money's for, Cal," I told him when he tried to argue. His graduation was on a Saturday in June. I sat in the audience with all the other parents and cried through the whole ceremony. When they called his name and he walked across that stage, I thought about the skeletal 15-year-old I'd picked up from the shelter 5 years earlier. He found me afterward in the parking lot. "I wouldn't be here without you, Auntie." "Yes, you would. You're stronger than you know." He shook his head. "We did it together." University was 3 hours away, but he came home every other weekend. I watched him transform over those 4 years. The program was brutal, but he handled it. Confident, strong, purpose-driven. The summer after his sophomore year, he volunteered at a local construction firm. I'd see him in the hallways wearing his hard hat, asking questions of the foreman. He was meticulous, calm, the kind of calm that comes from understanding what it's like to be exposed and vulnerable. Senior year, the Master of Architecture acceptance letter came. The University of Washington Graduate School of Architecture. We opened it together in my kitchen, both of us crying again. We went out to dinner to celebrate. He raised his water glass. "To architect Callum Vance M. Arch." I touched my glass to his. "Almost, Cal. Not without you." Graduate school nearly broke him. He called me one night after a particularly difficult design review. "I don't know if I can do this, Auntie. The pressure is immense." "Yes, you can. One foundation at a time. That's how we got here." He was quiet for a minute. "Okay. Third year, he did his final thesis project. It was a massive civic center that used innovative, but technically complex, cantilevered truss systems, the same systems that Marcus Thorne had botched so badly years before. Callum's design was flawless. He told me, "I like fixing things that are broken, anti-building systems, and maybe even people." My eyes filled and soared at the same time. He had found his truth. He applied for a prestigious fellowship with the Obsidian Group, a world-renowned firm known for pioneering structural integrity. He matched there after graduation. The fellowship was 5 years of hell, 100-hour weeks. He lost weight again, different reason this time. Just the grinding exhaustion of becoming a world-class architect. I had more time now that I was retired from the library. I'd bring him food in Tupperware containers, do his laundry when he came over on his rare days off. You focus on becoming a master, Cal. I'll focus on keeping you fed and in clean shirts. When he finished his fellowship at age 32, he was offered an attending architect position, his own title, overseeing projects worth hundreds of millions of dollars. I threw Callum a small celebration dinner at my house when he completed his fellowship at age 32. Just the two of us, the way we liked it. He brought me a bouquet of white lilies. "Thank you for everything, Auntie. For answering that call 20 years ago. You saved my life. You did this yourself, Cal. Every single bit of it." He shook his head. "We did it together." We ate in comfortable silence for a while. Then he asked the question he hadn't asked in years, his voice low. "You ever hear from Mom?" "No, not in 20 years. Not since the courthouse." "You think she's okay?" "I don't know, honey." He pushed his roasted vegetables around his plate. "I don't think about her much anymore." "That's healthy." He paused. "But sometimes I wonder if Marcus is still hurting her, or if he finally moved on. She made her choice, Cal. You can't save someone who won't save themselves." He nodded, changed the subject to something lighter, telling me about a junior project manager who had nearly fainted after a particularly tense client meeting. We didn't know that in 2 weeks everything would change. Callum's first week as an attending architect for the Obsidian Group was exactly what he had worked for. He was confident, skilled, mentoring the young fellows, saving careers by catching flaws before they became disasters. His past trauma felt firmly behind him, or so he thought. He told me later what happened that Tuesday night, 3 days after the incident, when he finally came over for dinner and we sat at my kitchen table with our cold tea between us. He told me all of it, the way you tell someone something you need them to understand, even though it still doesn't make perfect sense to you. It was a Tuesday. His shift started at 7 in the morning. Busy from the start. 2 high-rise bids to review, 1 airport terminal expansion requiring immediate redesign, and a massive $42 million corporate tower project, Icarus, that was already behind schedule and severely over budget. The kind of day where you don't sit down, don't eat, just move from one crisis meeting to the next. At 4:47 in the afternoon, the call came in to the Obsidian Group. Emergency structural distress, Project Icarus, 15 floors. The building was showing significant, visible microfractures in its critical shear walls. Callum, as the firm's leading expert in structural integrity, was rushed to the site. He was in the temporary site office when the project manager brought him the detailed structural analysis reports. The tension in the room was palpable. The site manager was reading off his preliminary findings. Lateral loads are showing 20% above tolerance. Microfractures spreading. This isn't a material failure. This is a design error in the foundation to superstructure connection. Callum was doing his rapid assessment, moving his eyes across the hundreds of digital blueprints projected onto the wall. The failure point was exactly where the main core shear walls met the 3-story basement parking garage. The project manager was reading from the lead architect's bio. The lead architect for Project Icarus is Marcus Thorne, of the firm Thorne and Associates. Callum stopped breathing. He looked at the bio picture projected next to the blueprints. It was older Marcus in a sleek suit, looking older and wealthier, but it was him. 20 years older, but the same cold, calculating eyes. His hands froze over the digital blueprints. The site manager asked if he was okay. "The design is actively failing," Callum stated, ignoring the question. "If we don't offload the weight from the shear walls, we risk a progressive collapse scenario. We need shoring immediately." Then the head of the Obsidian Group's legal department looked at Callum, their trauma expert on call. "You're up, Dr. Vance. The original architect is 4 hours away on a flight from London. We need a solution, or we shut the site down and face a $200 million lawsuit." Callum was staring at the failure report. The building was failing right in front of him. He told me about the memories that hit him all at once. Being 15 years old, terrified and malnourished in that outreach center. The courthouse where his mother had given him up without a fight. The 5 years of silence while Marcus had systematically lied about him. Then he remembered his professional oath, the deep conviction he had about building safely, and he remembered something I'd said to him years ago about understanding what it's like to need someone to fix your foundation. The legal head said his name again. Said they could hire an external forensic engineer, but they were 72 hours out at another site. The building didn't have 72 hours. Your call, Dr. Vance. Do we shut it down and let the liability fall on Thorne? Or do we try to save it? The whole world narrowed to that moment. Callum could have recused himself, told them he had a conflict of interest, that this was the man who had ruined his childhood, and another architect should take the lead. No one would have questioned it. He could have stepped back and let the legal head prepare the lawsuits while the building failed, guaranteeing Marcus Thorne's professional and financial destruction. Part of him wanted to. The 15-year-old part, the part that was still broken, still carrying the injustice. But he wasn't 15 anymore. He was the one who fixed foundations. He told the team to prep the immediate shoring plans. "I'm taking the lead. Get 20 hydraulic jacks to the basement level. Start calculating the maximum load we can offload from the core. I need a preliminary redesign of the shear wall connections drafted now." The team moved. He worked methodically the way he'd been trained. He diagnosed the flaw, a fundamental miscalculation in the torsion applied by the 3-story garage structure. He controlled the immediate threat, directed the shoring, and started the emergency redesign. His hands knew exactly what to do, even as his mind was screaming the names of the people who had hurt him. 5.5 hours later, the immediate structural failure was stabilized. The tension was controlled. The shear walls, though damaged, were shored up and secured. He told them to hold the site, send the shoring plan to the structural review board. Someone notify the lead architect that his design is fundamentally unsound, but the structure is temporarily secured. He walked out of the site office and sat down on a temporary scaffolding beam, took off his hard hat, his safety glasses, and put his head in his hands. The head of Obsidian's legal team found him 10 minutes later. "Dr. Vance, you saved the firm $40 million in immediate losses. Beautiful work," Callum said. "The original architect, that was Marcus Thorne. Yes, an extremely arrogant man. He fled a minor scandal years ago to work on the East Coast. Why? He framed me when I was a child. He ruined my life and drove my mother away. He's the reason I was living on the streets." The legal head blinked. "And you still saved his career by stabilizing this? You could have let it fail and walked away clean." Callum looked up. "I did the right thing. I saved the structure. His crime is an ethical problem. My duty is a physical one." The legal head nodded slowly. "You did the right thing. You are a truly honorable architect, Dr. Vance." Then he left Callum alone. A detective showed up while Callum was still sitting there. Detective Ramirez, the head of the city's building safety department. Detective Ramirez asked about the severity of the incident. Callum switched into professional mode. "Primary failure in the Corta Foundation connection. Flaw consistent with gross negligence, possibly intentionally overridden safety checks. The structure would have collapsed within 48 hours without immediate intervention. The failure is catastrophic." The detective wrote it all down, said it helped their case. They were preparing a warrant for Marcus Thorne's arrest for criminal negligence and fraud the moment he landed at the airport. Criminal negligence and fraud? Given the severity and the potential loss of human life, yes. This wasn't a design error. This was criminal arrogance, Dr. Vance. Callum nodded. After the detective left, Callum sat there until his hands stopped shaking. It was 3:17 in the morning when he finally took out his phone. He called me. The phone rang twice before I answered. "Cal, what's wrong? Are you hurt?" "No. Annie, you need to come to the city. I'm at Project Icarus." I was already getting out of bed. I'm on my way. What happened? It's Marcus. He designed the Icarus Tower. It's failing. He's going to be arrested for negligence. And I saved the structure. I couldn't speak for a second. You saved his building? I almost didn't. I stood there and I wanted to let it fail, let him face the consequences. But I didn't. But you didn't. I don't know if that makes me good or just weak. It makes you the man you chose to become, Callum. I'm proud of you. I'm on my way. I hung up, got dressed, and drove to the city in the dark. The roads were empty at that hour. I kept thinking about Callum standing over Marcus's colossal mistake, deciding whether to save his life's work. When I got there, he was sitting outside the temporary site shack, still in his work gear. His face was pale. He looked up when he saw me coming down the access road. I sat down next to him. Didn't say anything at first. Through the site windows, I could see the temporary supports, the frantic engineering team working the colossal building, standing because my nephew had intervened. You did good, Cal, I said. He shook his head. I don't know what I did. I took his hand. It was cold. You did what you were trained to do. You saved a building and likely hundreds of jobs. He didn't save mine. No, he didn't. We sat there in silence, watching the huge steel structure, this monument to the man who had abandoned him, and who he had just spent 5.5 hours preventing from collapse. What happens now? He asked. Now we wait. See if Marcus recovers from this professional shock. See what happens with the criminal charges. We keep living our lives either way. He leaned back against the temporary hoarding wall, closed his eyes. I'm so tired, Auntie. I know, honey. We sat there together, waiting for the sun to come up. 3 days after Callum stabilized the Icarus Tower, Marcus Thorne was released on bail after his arraignment on charges of criminal negligence and fraud. Callum refused to go into the initial legal review meetings where Marcus was present. I went alone to the Obsidian Group's conference room to speak with the head of the firm's legal team, Mr. Henderson. Marcus was still reeling from the immediate professional shock. His face was less arrogant, but drawn and covered in a sheen of cold sweat. He looked old, older than his 57 years. His eyes opened slowly, finding my face. Eleanor, you're still here. I am at the Obsidian Group because my nephew saved the $40 million tower that your reckless design almost destroyed, I stated flatly. You had a structural failure. He tried to remember, running his hand over his chin. Then panic hit his eyes. Callum? He's Dr. Vance, the attending architect. Yes, Callum Vance. He was on call when the stress levels spiked. He personally took the lead. He operated on your mistake. Marcus's face crumpled. No, he shouldn't have had to. I didn't think. He could have walked away. He didn't. I paused, letting the weight of the truth settle. He chose to save the innocent engineers and contractors who were counting on that building. He didn't choose to save you. A week later, Detective Ramirez came to talk to us. He found me and Callum in my kitchen, reviewing engineering reports. Marcus was being charged with criminal negligence, aggravated fraud, and reckless endangerment. The detective had a strong case: the site records, the 911 emergency call, and Callum's preliminary architectural report. The district attorney wants to make the case stronger, the detective said. We have the old internal firm records from 20 years ago, your fabricated youth incident, Dr. Vance. We want to use it to show a pattern of malice and unethical behavior. It establishes he's a habitual professional offender. It makes the case much stronger. Callum looked at me. Your choice, honey. No one can make you. Callum turned back to the detective. I'll testify. I want him legally and professionally barred from this industry where he belongs. Thank you, Dr. Vance. This matters. It could mean the difference between a 5-year sentence and a 15-year sentence. Callum asked me one afternoon if I had seen Evelyn. I told him that she had called Mr. Jensen's office, expressing deep remorse and asking if Callum would ever forgive her. I don't want to see her, Callum said, sitting in my living room, barely touching his food. Then don't. You don't owe her anything. He didn't sleep well for 3 days. I could tell from the deep circles under his eyes. Finally, he called me from his office. I'll go once. To say what I need to say. He went the next afternoon to Evelyn's small rental apartment. I wasn't there for it, but he told me later what happened. He stood in the doorway, didn't go inside. Evelyn thanked him for becoming such a respected man. He said he was a professional architect and mentor. It was what he did. She told him she knew she didn't deserve his forgiveness. He said she was right. She didn't. She tried to explain, said she was weak, terrified of being financially alone after Marcus fabricated his first major incident. Callum told her she wasn't alone. She had him. He was her son. She said she knew. Then he said the part that must have hurt the most. You let him blame me for a major structural failure when I was 10 years old. You destroyed my childhood reputation and sent me onto the streets at 15 rather than protect me. Evelyn started crying, said he mattered so much. But she knew she couldn't protect him from Marcus. He told her Marcus destroyed his life for 5 years. She watched it happen. Did nothing. He looked at the bruises she now carried. He told her Marcus would always hurt the people closest to him. She said she understood. He told her she was alive, she was safe from him, and that was all he could give her. He turned to leave. She said one more thing. I am proud of you, Cal. You became everything I couldn't be, strong and honest. Callum stopped in the doorway, didn't turn around. Goodbye, Mom. Then he walked out. The trial was 2 months later. Marcus had gotten himself an aggressive corporate defense attorney who tried to make it about simple professional error, but the evidence was overwhelming. Callum testified about the childhood fabrication and the professional consequences. He was calm, factual, and devastating. He gave expert architectural testimony about the Icarus Tower's catastrophic flaws, explaining the force required, the negligence needed, and the ethical breaches. Rebecca testified too, told everything. Years of manipulation. The jury deliberated for 7 hours, came back with guilty verdicts on all counts. The sentencing hearing was a week later. 15 years in federal prison. In the courtroom, Marcus stared at Callum with pure toxic hatred. Callum stared back. He didn't flinch. Not anymore. Outside on the courthouse steps, Callum and I stood together in the afternoon sun. It's finally over, Auntie. I took his hand. It's over, Cal. The ledger is settled. A year after the incident, it was a Sunday evening in late spring. Callum was helping me make dinner. He told me about his week, about a 16-year-old intern who had missed a critical design deadline. He'd operated the problem for 3 hours, saving the firm from a major contractual issue. The intern's older sister was in the waiting room for 6 hours. Reminded me of someone. I smiled. Did you tell her he'd be okay? I did. She cried and hugged me. I told her the kid was resilient. He'd make it. How did that feel? Good. Like everything comes full circle. I was that scared kid once. Now I'm the one who saves them. We sat down to eat. Comfortable silence between us. Then he said it. I saw Mom last week. I looked up. You did? Where? Ran into her at the community center. She was volunteering, helping with basic shelter outreach. How was it? Awkward. She asked how I was doing. I said fine. She said therapy's helping her. I said that's good. Then I left. How did you feel? He was quiet for a moment. Okay. Actually didn't hurt like I thought it would. Just neutral. Like seeing someone I used to know a long time ago. I'm fine, Auntie. I just needed to tell you. Honey. I'm okay with whatever you need. She's my niece and I love her, but you're my priority. Always have been. Thank you for everything. For that phone call 20 years ago, for taking me in, for believing me, for never giving up. My eyes filled up. You made it easy to believe in you, Cal. He raised his water glass. To family. The kind we choose. I touched my glass to his. To family. We finished dinner in that comfortable silence. The kind that only comes with people who've been through hell together and made it out the other side. This was it. This was what love looked like when it was real and earned and chosen. Not perfect, not without scars, but whole in the ways that mattered. I looked at him and felt peace. So that's my story. I'd love to hear what you think. Do you think Callum should eventually forgive Evelyn? Or should he keep his distance? Let me know in the comments and subscribe for more stories like mine.